I only do have two priorities, and that's what I want to talk about today. First of all, to support you in raising standards. We want every school in every community to be a good school, for there to be a choice of good local schools in every community. And secondly, to close the gap between disadvantage and attainment, to narrow and close the gap so that no pupil is held back or does less well because of the income of their family or the income in their community. Those are the only two priorities we have. Every school a good school, and closing the gap between poverty and attainment. And I can hear John already saying, where does cooking in schools fit into that? To which I have to say, John, there is always an exception which proves every rule. If you actually look at the facts, it is very striking the progress which has been made in the last 10 years in breaking that link. If you look at the area level, first of all, of the 20 local authorities which have had the biggest rise in 5 GCSEs over the last 10 years, the 20, if you like, areas with the highest average gain, 9 of the 20 are in the poorest 10% of areas in the country. 9 of the 20 in the areas which are in the 10% poorest area, and of those 9 areas, all of them are in London. Showing that where you have intensive engagement at the area level, the poorest areas are achieving the biggest result. And if you then move to the school level, you see the same thing. Schools which have less than 5% of their pupils with free school meals have seen a 10 percentage point rise in 5 good GCSEs, including English and Maths, in the last 10 years. Schools which have more than 50% of their pupils on free school meals have not seen a 10 percentage point rise, they've seen a 19 percentage point rise. Almost twice the level of achievement. And the interesting thing is that the top of the distribution of those poorest schools, the top 5%, are actually now matching for achievement the average of the schools with less than 5% free school meals. So at the school level too, in London and around the country, schools with the greatest disadvantage have had almost twice the level of results. When you move to the pupil level, you also see evidence of starting to break the link between deprivation and attainment, but it's harder. It's much harder. And the challenge for me is to ask, what more do we need to do to back school leaders in doing what great school leaders are about, ensuring every child can succeed and no barrier is too great to overcome. And as I said when I came to Brighton last year, nobody is saying that schools and school leaders should become the housing officer or the social worker or the CAMS advisor or the parent. Schools can't do those jobs. It's not the job of schools. But you also know that you can't drive the performance of those children unless those barriers are addressed. And that's why the legislation we're taking through on children's trusts is vitally important. John and for years, Jane today, ASCL, have talked about the importance of intelligent accountability. And John says to me, make sure intelligent accountability focuses on what really matters and focuses in particular areas on commissioning the services which schools need. And that is completely right. And the Children's Trust legislation is the best chance we've ever had to get that kind of local engagement of the service providers you need to back you in the jobs you're doing to raise standards in school. And my message is, seize this opportunity. Don't leave the seat empty. Go there and bang on the table and demand a better service from children's services for schools so that schools can do their job in raising attainment for all pupils. And as part of that, help us to support the very, very difficult and the very challenging, but the hugely important job that directors of children's services do in our country. What you do every day is vital to the future of all children in our country. My job is to do what I can to support you so that we can achieve what I believe is our shared objective, to make sure that opportunity is there and real, not just for some, but for all children and young people in our country. And I'm determined to keep working with you to get there. And I very much hope to make it back next year. In primary schools, 70% of primary school pupils live in areas where there's more than 20% free school meals. So most primary school children are going to school at primary schools in areas where there is considerably above average disadvantage. In secondary schools, that's only 55%. And actually, 28% of all pupils on free school meals in our country go to secondary schools which have below average numbers of free school meals compared to the average for the country. But the idea that the only schools who are truly stretching their pupils are those private schools teaching IGCSE is a nonsense. And it makes a mockery and it ignores the reality of the great strides in attainment which we've seen in recent years across our education system. And I think we should stop talking down the truth about those achievements and recognise the reality in the private and in the state school system of the great progress we've seen in standards in the last few years.